It's good to be with everyone today. Thanks for joining us. This is another webinar in the series of what we're calling the New Basics, a series of 4 webinars that we're doing between now and the beginning of January. This is number 2, because as we've been doing our work, as many of you know, we've been doing this work for 35 years now. And we just continue to keep learning. We continue to keep innovating. We continue to keep developing new materials and new ways of understanding this work. And so we're continuing to put the work together in ways that we think can make it more accessible and more doable for folks throughout the country, and where we can unleash people's full potential to take advantage of this work and move their communities, their organizations, their own lives forward, your own lives forward. So today is part 2 called the North Star. And I hope that many of you in a pre-email should have received a link to it. So I hope you'll pull that up or print it out. We'll go over it today. We've got a slide on it, so no worries about that. And in addition, what I'd love for you to do is to share it with folks that you're working with, whether in your own organization, in your communities, friends across the country, so that they can take advantage of this. Let me just say a couple of other things before we jump into this. As I mentioned, this is part 2. Part 1 was on the mantras. 4 mantras that we've developed around our work. We'll touch on those today. So if you missed the first one, we're going to come back to the mantras today. But there's a whole separate webinar on the mantras that is really good and will help you move forward. The third webinar, which is going to be on November 2nd at 1 p.m., is going to be on what we call the new Turning Outward Scorecard, which is not a punitive scorecard, but a way for you to gauge where you are in applying the practice over time and to determine where you believe you need to spend more time to develop your ability to turn outward and put this practice into use. It's a really great scorecard. We're using it in a lot of our work now. And then the fourth part is going to be called Key Elements to Staying Grounded. So we've isolated 4 or 5 parts of the practice, all things that you've been introduced to before if you've gone to a lab or any of the new labs, but we pulled them together as ways in which you can use these tools to stay grounded, to ensure that you're being turned outward and applying the practice and staying aligned to the work that you really want to do. That's on January 9th at 1 p.m. All this is on our website. There's a page called the New Basics Webinar Series, and these webinars will be evergreen. We'll keep them up forever so that you can continue to return to them. As I mentioned before, you can share them with others, and you can put them to good use. All right. Everyone still with me here? All right, so let's jump into this. So this session, as I mentioned, is called the North Star. And in today's world, as you know, and I'm sure we're all experiencing, it's a kind of topsy-turvy environment that we're living in. It's often disorienting and confusing. It's hard sometimes not to be all things to all people, or at least to try. And the question is, how do you stay aligned with some kind of North Star moving forward and ensure that you're on the right path in terms of, in this case, applying the Institute's practice and approach so that you can create a more equitable, fair, just, inclusive, and hopeful community. And collectively together, we can help get this country on a better path. So to get started, before I jump into the North Star and go through it, a quick couple of questions. And for this, you can put responses in the chat. In the chat, better yet, you can just shout them out. So my first question is this: What in your work or life is outside of the Institute now? What in your work or life provides a North Star for you and helps keep you focused on the path you want to be on? What in your life provides a North Star for you that keeps you focused on the path you want to be on? Thoughts, reactions, ideas?
No one likes silence. Hi, Rich. It's Lisa Buxbaum from Spoken Words. Um, for me, it's all part of me being my best self in the world. So it's my family, my faith, and the fact that doing this work to help people who are going through challenging setbacks or times, I feel that it's my calling. So it's really invigorating work, and I think the reason I'm here is it's also exhausting and exhilarating work. So um, that's my North Star, like just to be me.
Great. Thanks. And thanks for jumping in first. Who else? What's your North Star? I'm seeing a lot of folks putting things in the chat: family, faith, uh, grandchildren. I just had my first grandchild 3 months ago, so I can relate to that one. Others, what's your North Star for your work or your life? Even if you
Richard, Gloria, I know you called out faith, but I have to say that my faith is my North Star because therein lies my whole focus in the way that I show up in the world and the meaning that I get from my work, and also as it relates to my engagement with others.
Great. Great. Thanks, Gloria. How about someone else? What's your North Star?
I like being around positive people. When I'm with people that are very negative, boy, I turn right around. I just got to be around people that have that positive drive.
Great. Thanks, Marla. How about someone else? Someone just wrote in the chat: commitment to family, equity, and inclusion, fundamental belief in the value of our work and its impact in our community. We'll get to that in a moment. Anything else?
My North Star is making a difference, however large or small.
However large or small. Great. What makes it hard to stay on the path of the North Star that you have? What makes it hard to stay on that path over time? Marley, you mentioned negative people. How about some others? What makes it difficult to stay on the path?
Discouragement or distractions.
Discouragement or distractions. Okay, what else?
Yeah, I think I look for great stories, but the media, anything you read is very distracting and can kind of disrupt your positivity.
Great. Okay. Well, not great that disrupts your positivity. Thanks for jumping in, Sherry.
Sometimes lack of resources.
Lack of resources. Okay. What else?
Setbacks or obstacles thrown in your path.
Right. And what do those do to you?
They frustrate you and make you go, okay, don't forget 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's okay too. It's still making progress.
Okay, great. A voice from Lexington who I just saw recently. Who else? What else?
I think there's always headwinds. And how much energy do you have to continue walking through the headwinds? Right. And sometimes you've got to take a break. Sometimes you need to duck into an alcove and hide. But if you don't get back into the headwinds, then you're not going to be able to make the change you want.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Good to see you. How about someone else?
Sherry here. I think people who aren't willing to adapt and change.
Great. People who not willing to adapt and change. Anyone else? Someone wrote in the chat, pressure to take on things that do not move us forward. Another person wrote, challenges that need our attention usually are long haul issues, right? So it's easy to lose our attention. So keep all these things in mind. The reason why we created this North Star is that, like many of you said, there's so many demands on each of us, particularly in the work that we're doing in our organizations and in communities, right? There are demands coming from every direction. Those demands seem to be increasing over time, and the difficulty of the work seems to be increasing. And as someone mentioned, there's a kind of fatigue that sets in as well that we're finding all across the country, that this work can be wearing. We just came out of COVID. I just gave a talk in Lexington a couple of days ago, and I was saying to the folks I was speaking with, you know, we all went through COVID. We came through COVID. We had a sigh of relief. And then in the moment that we were engaging in the sigh of relief, we realized that our work wasn't over. It was actually just beginning. And in the beginning of that work, we've come through an exhaustive period, not just with COVID, but with our politics, with challenges around, increasing challenges around disparities and inequities that have only grown over this period, right? Lost sense of hope in so many communities, that this work has become not less difficult, but in many respects more difficult. And yet people are asking us to do more, right? And there's a need to do more. So at the Institute, not long ago, we were thinking about our work has grown over the years. It's become multi-layered. Many of you have sort of experienced some early parts of that by going through either the Getting Started lab. Some of you are now, I know, because I can see you in our Unleashing Impact lab. But there are a lot of layers to our work. And we were saying, how is it that we could put something together, even after we've been doing this for 35 years, how is it that we could put something together that would help people create a North Star for themselves about what we call the Harwood approach and our practice, and put it all in one place that you could refer to it over time, that would enable you, in terms of this work, to stay on the path and become even more effective and more impactful, and I would add, more joyful in the work that you're doing by using the Institute's approach. And so we came up with what are the essential things we think folks would need to know. If you didn't know anything else, what are the essential things you would need to know in order to apply this approach and start to make a difference and to stay on your path, to have a North Star? So as many of you said, as you start to work on issues that require working over the long haul, as you start to work on issues where you begin to get knocked off your path, as you start to work on issues where it's one step forward sometimes and two steps back, when you start to work on this work where you have limited resources and you know you need more resources, but they're not coming anytime soon, how is it that you can stay moving in the right direction? Or as we say at the Institute, how can you stay moving in the right trajectory, right? With not diminishing momentum and diminishing confidence, but how can you do it with expanding confidence and growing momentum? And so we came up with this North Star, and we piloted it in some areas, and now we're using it. So what I'd love to do is, some of you have seen this. For those of you who've seen it, so this is going to be a really good review of the North Star in 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes. And for those of you who the North Star is new, this will be a good introduction to it. And then you can start to apply it immediately in your work. And as I go through it, I'll also point you to some other resources that you can look at if you want to go deeper into some of these pieces. You all with me? This makes sense? All right. So the North Star it's basically a folded 11 by 18 piece of paper. If we send you one, which we're happy to send you one, so you can just sort of put in the chat box that you can print this out. And we're happy to send you one that's sort of more laminated, that's a little more durable on cardboard. And we'll just put it in the chat and we'll be sure to send you one. So the front cover of it, I'm not going to go through all this other than to say, I want to point you to the last line that's all in red, all in bold, all in caps, which says, how we do the work is as important as what we do. How we do the work is as important as what we do. And I think right now in our country, we have tons of initiatives and strategies and programs. They're all necessary. There's a lot of redundancy as well, but a lot of our work takes place in the form of initiatives, strategies, and programs. The challenge is our civic culture is really weak, right? Our networks, our norms, our relationships, our sense of shared purpose, right? A sense of hope. That's really weak. And so how we do the work, how we go about doing the work is as important as what we do. And at the Institute, we believe we need to pay, we meaning all of us and the country and communities, need to pay a lot more attention to how we're doing things and why we're doing things, not just what we're doing. If, in fact, we're going to move the country forward and people are going to have a greater sense of hope. So let me talk to you about what that really means. So let's go to the next slide. This is if you fold out the North Star, remember it's an 11 by 18 sheet of paper essentially. So this is the center of it. And I'm just going to quickly take you through the different parts of this. And I'm going to start, as you can imagine, in the middle, in what we call the circle, the Harwood Circle. And I'm going to start in the upper right-hand part of this circle where it says civic faith. Everyone see that? And the reason why I'm starting with civic faith and not with our practice of turning outward, which a lot of you are familiar with, is civic faith is a practical philosophy that we've developed over 35 years at the Institute. And it's probably in the last, 5 or 7 years that we've begun to articulate it explicitly, as opposed to piecemeal and implicitly, and to lift it up in all of our work and to put it at the core of everything that we're doing. And I write extensively about civic faith in the book Stepping Forward. There's some things on our website about civic faith, but in a nutshell, for today, I just want to say civic faith is that we're putting people at the center of everything we're doing, not our metrics, not our programs, not our strategies, people. That we believe in a culture of shared responsibility and creating a culture of shared responsibility in communities. And that community needs to be a common enterprise, meaning that that it's for all people, not just for some of us, and that we need to be working with common purpose, with a common cause, in a common or shared direction. And so the reason why we start with civic faith is that we believe that in a country like ours today, everything that we're doing should be contributing to engendering greater civic faith in society and in community and in one another, right? Otherwise, why are we doing this? So that means we've got to put people at the center. We've got to be really intentional about creating a culture of shared responsibility, and we've got to make community a common enterprise. Second, turning outward, the practice, which many of you are familiar with, or at least parts of it. Turning outward is both a mindset, as you know, of making the community and people your reference point, not yourself, not your own organization, not your own programs, and a set of practices, right, that enable you to create change that's rooted in what matters to people and grows the civic culture of the community, and in turn produces impact and grows civic faith in the community. How change happens is how change actually unfolds. So if you can look at the top of this North Star, you'll see the chain reaction. So I'm going to come back to this. But we believe that change starts small and grows over time. and that our goal should be to unleash a chain reaction of actions over time. And then in the middle of this circle is how you show up. Someone mentioned this a few moments ago. We believe at the Institute that at the end of the day, how each of us shows up dictates how we're going to do the work. It dictates how we're going to create progress in communities. It dictates whether or not we're going to be intentional in our actions. It dictates the choices and judgments we make and the discernments we make in the work that we're doing. So this circle is in the middle because we believe that we need to keep this front and center as a North Star, as part of the North Star, if in fact we want to create change. Okay, still with me? Great. So I'm going to now go through this and I'm going to go counterclockwise. So I'm going to start at the top where you see catalyze and unleash a chain reaction. And as I just mentioned, this deals with how change happens. And we believe that change happens by unleashing a chain reaction that typically starts with small actions that spreads and takes root, spreads and grows over time. And when we do this really well, spreads like a positive contagion in a community, which is what the book Unleashed is all about, documenting stories where that actually has happened across the country. This work is rooted in public knowledge of the community, what matters to people, and then our actions turn into ripple effects, which typically spread through networks in a community, which, if we do this well, creates impact in a community and grows civic faith, right? So the chain reaction is really important because it's a way in which you can catalyze and unleash change in your community without getting all wrapped up in trying to create everything at once, or believing you have to be all things to all people, or believing you need a comprehensive plan for every challenge in the community, which we know in today's environment often will not work and does not work. This allows you to begin to get started, get moving, create change. And the good news is we have tons of examples of this from across the country. All right, so let's go counterclockwise here. Next, I'm going to go to the key mantras to take action. I was sitting in our conference room one day with a colleague saying, if we could say just 4 things to people about this work that would keep them moving and almost create mantras about how change comes about, what are those things we'd say? And we came up with these 4 mantras. There's a whole webinar on this. This was part 1 of this webinar series called The New Basics. But as you can see, one is you've got to be turned outward, right? We can't be turned inward to do this work. We've got to have the community and people in our line of sight if we're going to create impact in terms of what matters to people in their lives and engender civic faith. We believe you got to get in motion, right? We can be planning till the cows come home, but those plans, nothing happens. I just came from Lexington, where folks there keep telling me all they do is plan, but they're not putting those plans into action, right? Which creates false hope, not positive hope, not authentic hope. So if you want to create a chain reaction that takes root, grows, and spreads, you got to be in motion. So we have a bias towards action at the Institute, not talk, action. Third, as I've said now a few times, one of the third mantras, start small to go big. We believe we need systemic change in society, full stop. I want to be really clear about that. We need it on a whole lot of things. We believe that in order to get moving on this and create greater civic confidence and more hope, and to demonstrate that change is possible in a society that is highly resistant to progress, we need to start small to go big. You can go fast, but don't bite off too much, because when we do, things collapse. And then lastly, the last mantra is create a new trajectory of hope. Stay focused on creating a trajectory that's upward moving, that's increasing with civic confidence, that's growing our sense that we can do things together, and that is engendering a greater sense of civic faith. Too many of our efforts start and then fizzle out. The reason why we want to start small to go big is because we want to demonstrate that change is possible and it can actually grow and spread like a positive contagion. People don't expect us to solve every problem today. You know that. What they do want to see is progress and that we're moving with increasing momentum. We can make that happen. It's happening in communities all across America. All right, I'm going to keep going here. The power of public knowledge. Many of you have used our community conversations. I'm going to say something provocative. I don't care about community conversations. Let me say it again. I don't care about community conversations. What I care about is that we're developing public knowledge from the conversations we're holding so that we can use it to reframe in communities what matters to people and get focused on that. That's one of the powers of public knowledge. I'm interested in this public knowledge because we can enlist allies by sharing this public knowledge with others, and people can start to raise their hands and say, I want to work on that. I have something to contribute, right? We have tools to help you do that. I'm interested in public knowledge because we can use it to develop strategies that actually address what matters to people. That's the benefit here. Yes, the conversations create a greater sense of belonging, all for it. But remember, we all want to see progress. So, and then the fourth power of public knowledge is if you use it and put it at the center of the table, you can use it to align people's actions over time. You can use it as a touchstone. Like, are we actually acting on what matters to people? Whether, as someone said, whether it's big or small, we don't care. Just get moving. That's what we care about. So these powers of public knowledge are really critical because they give you a different kind of authority and credibility in the community that's rooted in what matters to people in the community. And then they give you the power and the ability to enlist allies, to reframe things, enlist allies, develop new strategies, and align action over time. Okay, last but not least. Well, second to last. I'm from New York, so I always say last, which means I get multiple other tries at this, right? So last in the New York phrase is key inflection points. These are all the things that we've documented over the years and put in a single list that stop us from moving. We get caught in planning mode, right? We choose the wrong partners because we want to be nice, when we really should be a little bit more ruthless about who we're choosing to run with. We aren't opportunistic in seeing and seizing opportunities that present themselves. We think we just have to stick to the plan. Except opportunities arise, we need to take them. Impact isn't our focus, process is, right? And so we get lost in process when really we're trying to help people move forward in their lives and help a community move forward. So these inflection points are all the things that stop us. Here's the good news. If you keep this North Star front and center and you keep looking at these inflection points, you're going to start to anticipate them. And when you anticipate them, you can move through, you can avoid them, or when you encounter them, you can name them more easily and move through them. You all with me here? So these inflection points are really important because this is what we find stops people in their tracks all the time. They're going to come up. It's just a matter of when, and then it's a matter of how you're going to deal with them. That's it. They're coming. There's no way to get rid of them. The question for us, all of us, is how are we going to deal with it? That's the question. All right, let's just go to the back part of this, this North Star. So we're also thinking about, when we were putting these ideas together, how could we create a turning outward checklist that would make things a little easier for you when you're getting started and trying to keep things moving? And so I'm not going to go through this whole list, but as you can see, it deals with how you show up and taps into certain things like the mantras. There's a second section. The middle section deals with taking action. And so this deals with, how is it, do you have public knowledge? Are you applying the public knowledge? Are you choosing the right partners? Are you calibrating and recalibrating your action over time because conditions change, right? Those are all things embedded in our practice. And then lastly, are you staying grounded, which is the topic of webinar 4, part 4 coming in January. So this checklist is really handy. It's not the whole practice, obviously, but if you just stay focused on some of these steps, I can guarantee you're going to make progress. You're going to take action. You're going to make progress. You're going to build momentum. All right. So did I go through that quickly enough? That was like speed dating. All right. Not that I've been speed dating lately. I've been married for 35 years. So just a reference point for everyone. Can you see how you might be able to use this? Can you see how this might be useful to the efforts that you're doing in communities, in your community, in your organization? So before you jump in, we're actually going to ask you to go into small groups to talk about that. So here's the thing. We're going to drop you into small groups of pairs or groups of 3. It'll vary. And here's the question I'd like you to talk about together. You're just going to have about 7 or 8 minutes. So it's just a warm up for you. And then we'll come back and talk about it as a group. In your personal or professional life, how could you use this North Star? And importantly, where would you need to put it physically in order to make use of it? Where would you need to literally put it to make use of it? And I'll have some funny stories to tell you when you come back about where some people have placed it in their lives. But you all ready for a quick conversation on this? So how could you use the North Star? How could you apply it? And where could you physically put it so that it actually becomes a North Star for you in this work? Okay. So as people keep coming back in, what ideas did you come up with in terms of how you might be able to use this?
Rich, I found that looking at your key inflection points to work through, outside of the turning outward is community conversations, the rest of these are life lessons that I could use in business. I'm just oftentimes looking at, I was just saying to Ramona, we were in a room together, that you find yourself staring at your monitor wondering, what the hell am I doing?
Exactly.
And so I want to cut this out, sort of print it out and cut it out. And I'm going to actually stick it to my monitor.
Great. I love it. I love it. I love 2 things about what you just said. 3. One is you named the challenge. Second, you applied it even beyond the turning outward practice, because we believe actually our practice can be applied to almost every aspect of one's life, which you did immediately. And third, you made it really practical by saying, I'm going to cut it out and post it someplace. So that's a trifecta. I grew up next to the most historic racetrack in America. That's a big win. So Ralph, thanks for mentioning that. What else?
It occurred to me that it being able to look at these every day would help me, because I'm in an organization where the larger organization has not been able to really hone in on some key places to focus on. So if I'm going to focus where I'm at, for me and my staff, I like that you're expected to start small and do small and be effective. So being able to see that, yes, next to my computer monitor, but also in a notebook where I take notes wherever I'm at.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Thanks for offering that. Okay, someone else? Let's just get some comments in. Yeah.
Rich, I was with a great group. Nancy had some great ideas. She's going to be at a retreat tomorrow, so she's going to share it with all the academic people that she's working with tomorrow. Personally, I want to save it as my screensaver and share it broadly every time I'm on the computer. and in my life personally and professionally. And then Pascal works in Canada, and she was very excited because she's going to translate the materials into French and share them with her community, her neighborhood, and her country. Put them in the Library of Congress, she suggested might be great in Canada. So
love it. And for anyone who's Canadian on the call, you should know the Institute's been working in Canada for about 25 years. We're doing work there right now. This work has also been translated into Chinese and other languages all around the world. So just go with it. I think that's a great idea. Thanks for offering those. Other thoughts? A couple other quick thoughts. I know Nancy's going to share it with her academic community, because Nancy is the Juanita Appleseed of America. So other thoughts?
Rich, this is Lisa again.
Hey.
I just wanted to show people after the last workshop, I put the key mantras on my wall. It's right across where I sit, so I see it every day and it inspires me. And right now we're taking a new workshop series to long-term care facilities. So we're going state by state. And, you know, if it takes like 8 or 10 times to get them to call you back because we're giving them this amazing initiative, it's like run with the wrong partners, not going to do that. So this is very helpful. It's like the cliff notes of how to be a really successful change agent and social entrepreneur. So thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us. And I'm going to share this with my team. It's really helpful.
Wonderful. Share with as many people as you can. Just keep printing it out. Or we're going to start offering packages of these that you can order that will be on cardboard, a little heftier, that we'd love to share with you. Anyone else? Or not anyone else? Someone else? Bad question. How might you apply this or use it, and where might you put it?
I'm going to put it on in my car as I'm heading towards work or to an event or whatever, of just reminding me as I'm stopping at the red lights that take forever in Florida. You know, I can just remind myself daily of what's happening.
Well, you know, you are, as far as I know, the second or third person in Florida who has decided to put it in their car. So it must be something about the Florida water, the Florida politics, something that.
I'm glad I'm in Ohio.
And in Ohio too. How about one other thought about where you might use this or how you might apply it? In what way could you see this helping to accelerate your work or deepen your work?
Something that really resonated with me on it is the constant course correction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just reminding yourself that, yes, things may seem to go off track and you can always come back and go around, come back to it, and keeping that focus where it needs to be, I think has incredible value in this. And I intend to share elements with clients and anybody else who will listen. Yeah,
well, I hope you'll share the whole thing with them. That's just my plug to keep it coherent. And I love what you've alluded to in your comment, which is there isn't a final destination for this work, so you don't have to feel like you have to get everything right from the get-go. What's more important is showing up, and in showing up, recognizing that we've got to keep applying ourselves, that showing up, we've got to keep making discernments about what's happening, in showing up that we've got to continue to be intentional about the choices and judgments that we're making, in showing up that requires us to continually calibrate and recalibrate our efforts, sometimes because our efforts aren't on target, other times simply because the world around us has changed. And we have to adjust with the changes in the world, which is why being turned outward is so important. Because if you're not turned outward, you'd never know things changed enough that you have to recalibrate. And here's the other thing. If you recalibrate, and keep your work going on a new trajectory, I can almost guarantee you, you will engender greater civic faith in your community because people will know that you're focused on what matters to them, that you're focused on what matters to the community, that you care about what actually happens, not just about raising money or hitting your metrics or having nice annual reports, all of which are important, by the way. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient in this work, right? This work is about people and communities. That's why we're all here together, right? Because we believe we've got to get on a better path in our communities and in this country. So remember, this is just an introduction to the North Star. We've done this just for an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. I believe in starting on time and finishing on time, even finishing early if that's possible. So I'm just going to shift gears into some quick takeaways that I want you to have, because we've got about 9 minutes left here. All things I've mentioned, or you've mentioned, more importantly, today. One, make sure you print the North Star out. You've got the link, print it out. You can also email us. We're going to send you an email so that you can actually order copies of this if you want copies from the Institute. But to use it, print it out, or as Marla said, make it a screensaver, right? Second, in order for this to be useful, you've got to use it, which means you've got to use it in your daily life and work. So Ralph, your idea about putting this in your business, I love it. Please do it. Let me know how it goes. But we've got to make this real. This can't be talk, right? We're all interested in making progress and improving society, transforming society. Put the North Star to work in your daily life and work. Third, keep it where you can see it. If you can't see it, you're not going to remember it. If you don't remember it, you're not going to use it. Plain and simple. Let's get real. It's got to be where you can see it. Fourth, this is really important. Notice how you're using it and name what you're doing with it. How are you learning? Not from the North Star, how are you learning in your work, right? So you've got to notice and name what you're doing, how you're using the North Star, and what's resulting from that. That will give you greater momentum to use it. And importantly, it will help you create a habit. That's how habits form, right? We notice what we're doing, we name things, we keep repeating and using it and applying it in different ways. That's how a habit's going to form. And that's what you want here. You want a habit, right? A practice, what the Institute would call a practice. All right. In the last couple of minutes we've got left, I've got one question for you and one announcement. So my question is this. What was it that you liked or felt from this session that worked for you? What was it that in this session you liked or felt worked for you?
The inflection points for me, this is Kathy, the inflection points for me that being re-emphasized. I'm just now going through the work, the lab, and so I'm not real far into it, but that was a big help to me today.
Great. How about someone else? Working small, thanks. Someone else?
I like the pairing exercise and talking about it, especially where to physically put it, was enlightening to me. Thanks.
Great. So the implication of that is find a partner in your organization, in your network, in your community, pair up with them, talk about how you can use this, where you can put it, have a buddy, hold each other mutually accountable. How about someone else?
I liked hearing, oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I liked hearing how we have done community conversations, Rich, and we like them, but we like them for the reason that you end up like them. However, we've met a lot of people now that weren't in them. How do we get them in, into the process of, the work? And I'd like how this will help bring those folks on board without having to think you have to go back and have a conversation.
Great. Excellent. All right. Someone else was going to jump in when Sherry started.
I like that it starts with how you show up,
Mm-hmm.
because it's busy week. Tomorrow's Jewish holiday and busy week at work. And one of my closest friends had major surgery, and I showed up because her health proxy couldn't. And to me, that feels like it's great to be a social entrepreneur, but I'm also doing that in my personal life. So it's all authentic. And it just, every time I spend time with you, you've codified so much knowledge, and it just like oxygen. It's very helpful. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. And I hope your friend does well. Someone else?
Rich, it's Gloria, and what I liked was the just the total revisit of the North Star, because you're absolutely right. You have to have it in a place where you can see it and revisit it, because what I understand, I've done 2 community conversations. I'm still, and I have my 3rd one coming up at the end of the month. But on the way to unleashing the chain reaction, what I've come to know is that the conversation is a mixed bag. And anything in that bag can throw you off course.
Yep.
And then just having this revisit of the North Star becomes, the juice that I needed to keep me going.
Great. Love it, Gloria. Love it. All right. 2 quick announcements. I told you I'm from New York. I said 1 announcement. I actually have 2. So here's the first one. 2 more webinars in this series. Remember, it's a 4-part series. We've realized that we need to put them, just in terms of applying the North Star, we realized we need to recalibrate how we're doing this. We put too much time between webinar 1 and webinar 2. So we're going to close the period of time, narrow the period of time in between. So part 3, which is this turning outward scorecard, which is a ton of fun to use and really beneficial in using the practice and making sure you're applying it, is on November 2nd at 1 p.m. Mark your calendars. We'll send out some reminders. We'd love for you to join us. Bring as many people as you can, right? Part 4 is key elements to stay grounded. We've talked about how easy it is to sort of get knocked off the path. The North Star helps you sort of know where you're going and how to get there. The key elements to staying grounded keeps your feet on the ground. And so we're going to give you some really concrete tools that you can use in different contexts, right? With different challenges to stay grounded. That's July 9th in 2024. In 2024. All right.
January 9th, not July 9th.
January 9th. Sorry, July 9th is approaching my birthday. That's probably why I said that. So January 9th, 2024. Thanks, Lisa. Last announcement is this. Our country, I believe our country's on the wrong path. And I know a lot of people in the country share that. And so we're announcing in a soft way now a new speaking tour for 2024. We're actually beginning it in 2023 in a number of places that have already signed up, with the tagline, enough with what's going on, time to build. Time to build. And so I believe that, as I said before, we can spend all our time talking about different initiatives, different strategies, different programs. That's all important. And I believe in all those things. And I know you believe in all those things. They're necessary, but it's clear that they're not sufficient. Our civic culture, our networks, our norms, our relationships, our sense of shared purpose, the narratives that we tell one another about the shape of our country and communities and our lives, it's all going in the wrong direction. And it's not strong enough to support the action that we need to help transform people's lives and transform communities. And so this tour is going to be about how is it that we can strengthen the civic culture of our communities and our society while we're taking action on what matters to people. And it's going to be a call. We're doing this directly around the presidential campaign on purpose to create a counter narrative to the nonsense that we know we're going to hear, and to the acrimony and divisiveness we know we're going to hear, and to this peddling of false hope we know we're going to hear, that there's an alternative way for us to come together as members of this society to generate a different kind of society that is community-led, community-driven, and that will permeate and grow across the country. So that's the quick commercial for it. If you're interested in this tour to bring it to your community, drop your name in the chat. Just put tour and your name, and someone on our team will reach out and be in touch with you. We're going to go clear across the country. I'm already starting in Fresno. We're going to Owensboro. This is all this year, and probably a couple of other places. And then we're going to spend a lot of 2024 going across the country. In addition, we'll have virtual events that you can join in on to have these conversations. We'll be providing some tools and other assets you can use in your own communities and organization to spread this yourself. But right now we're concentrating on inviting people to be part of this tour. You're the first ones we're mentioning this to. We're going to start sending out emails and announcements in the coming weeks, but you're all here, we're all here, and we thought we would mention this while we're here together. All right. I hope you'll join us in doing that. I hope you'll come to the next part 3 on November 2nd. I hope you'll come to part 4 in January, not July, but January 2024. And I hope you'll let us know how we can support you, because that's actually why the Institute's here, to enable you to do the work that you believe and the people in your communities believe are really important to help grow our sense of possibility, our sense of hope, and our sense of civic faith in society. So thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day. Have a great weekend as it approaches, and be well and stay healthy.